We will be recording. It's also important to know that we will have translation in French. So if you want to choose French, go to the icon below. Welcome. Welcome. We are having people from Haiti, from Grenada, from Barbados, from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, lots of people from the islands. Again, I let you know that we are having simultaneous translation in French, so please feel free to choose the option you prefer. So we should be starting, and thanks to everyone for being here today. We are having this webinar on effective teaching practices in teacher training curricula by Dr. Ornit Spektor-Levi and Professor Zemira Mevarech from Bar-Ilan University in Israel. This webinar is in the framework of the project we are carrying out with the University of West Indies at Cave Hill, thanks to the support of EEF. And I will give the word now to Dr. Rafael Carrasco, who is the Deputy Director of SUMMA, who will give you some introductory words. Rafael.
Okay, thank you, Ivana, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. We have people here from very different time zones. So in the name of SUMMA, the Center for Education, Research, and Innovation for Latin America and the Caribbean, I would like to welcome you all and thank you for joining us in this seminar. So we're happy to be hosting this seminar, especially dedicated to effective pedagogical practices in teacher training. And I would say that the issue of effectiveness in teaching and learning is a topic that has been gaining interest in the field of education in the last year, especially as we have been accumulating evidence worldwide about what works and what doesn't, and what works better and what doesn't. So international evidence has begun to show conclusively that there are certain practices that are particularly effective in supporting and promoting learning, and therefore they should be considered in terms of teaching. I am thinking, and I can mention the work developed by the EF, our partners in UK, a leading institution in highlighting the evidence, the world evidence in terms of pedagogical strategies and evidence for improving education. They have highlighted a couple of strategies: metacognition and metacognitive reflections, pedagogical feedback, collaboration. There are key practices that are especially important in promoting and fostering the student learning. So the question that emerges here is, how can we train our students in these strategies? And as important as that question is, how can we prepare our teachers to teach these strategies? Yes. So there are different questions that we could get from them. For example, what are the most effective practices teachers may implement to boost their students' learning? How do we educate or prepare teachers to implement those practices? And which are the leading teacher programs that incorporate effective teaching practices in their curriculum? So those are very important questions, and we're talking about a kind of a cutting-edge challenge that is something that has been arising in the last years. So to address these questions, we have today two very distinguished guests from Israel, from the University of Bar-Ilan. I'm talking about Professor Zemira Mevarech and Dr. Spektor-Levi. They have been working for many years in the design and implementation of school programs using this type of evidence. And they have developed a couple of programs, the program Improve and Mufa, that has been highlighted by the OECD as some of the most outstanding and effective global initiatives in terms of promoting student learning. So they have a lot of experiences designing, developing, and implementing these kind of programs. And they also have a lot of experience preparing teachers for that, because they have also been in charge of teacher training at the Faculty of Education of the University of Bar-Ilan. I would like to say also that we have been working with them for several years. They have guided and supported us in the development of programs in Chile based on all their experience and expertise in this field. I'm talking about the Chaka program, that is a program implemented to support and promote education in very rural and vulnerable areas in the north of Chile. And we have received their support and guidance in the development and contextualization of these kind of strategies. So I would like to say that we are really fortunate to have them with us to share their experience and their wisdom. So thank you, Zemira Mevarech, for being with us. I would also like to thank our colleagues from the University of West Indies. We are working with them to inform and to support them in their reform of the initial teacher training curriculum at the campus Cave Hill. I would also want to thank to our partners from UK, the EF, the Education Endowment Foundation. I mentioned them before, and they will also give us some open remarks later. They have been our partners in the project with SUMMA in promoting a global awareness about the importance of evidence and the use of evidence in of effective practices in our education systems. Also with the IDRC, the International Development and Research Center of Canada, and our colleagues from UDB, Universidad Diego Portales from Chile. Finally, I would like to thank to the KIX team for organizing this webinar. I'm talking about Raúl Chacón, the director of the KIX program, and Iván Zacarias, our project manager and researcher for the project of teacher training reform at the University of West Indies. So thank you very much. Welcome all of you. And Ivana, I leave the floor to you.
Thank you, Rafael. And now I will ask Amy Faw, International Program Manager from the Education Endowment Foundation, to give you some words. I know that Amy will share some slides.
Thank you, Ivana. Thank you, Rafael. I'm not sure if I can share my slides, so maybe I'll just proceed without them in the interest of time. But just to say that we're really pleased to be invited by SUMMA today and to share with you, by way of introduction, more about our work and how we have embedded evidence into teacher professional development. So to explain a little bit more about who we are, we've been operating in the English education system now for over 10 years. And our mission really is to address two gaps. The first, the poverty-related educational achievement gap. And we aim to do this by closing a second gap, which is the education evidence gap. We're an independent charity, but we were set up with funding from the Ministry of Education in the UK, the Department for Education, and with two founding charities, the Sutton Trust and Impetus PEF. And our approach to evidence, much like that of SUMMA, has three elements. That is evidence synthesis, taking what we know about different education approaches and interventions, like metacognition, like collaborative learning, and like feedback, and synthesizing them into accessible summaries for time-poor teachers. Underpinning this evidence synthesis work is our global education database, which contains the highest quality studies in education. And this database also allows us to spot gaps in the evidence, of which unfortunately there are many, which is why we're also committed to the second area of evidence work, which is evidence generation, generating new evidence on what works, giving grants to test high potential projects, and publishing independent, rigorous evaluation reports which feed back into the global education evidence base. Finally, and what we're all here to talk about today, is turning evidence into practice in the classroom. And to this aim, we have carried out many projects so far. For instance, the development of guidance reports, reports for teachers on different pedagogical approaches or subject areas, again, like feedback, metacognition, collaborative learning, that make clear, practical and evidence-based recommendations to help teachers translate evidence into practice. Alongside this, we're also focused on system capacity building via our regional work and the development of a network of schools who provide continued professional development on such effective approaches. And we've been working with SUMMA now, I think, for nearly 5 years, as Raphael said, on many different areas, the development of an education evidence platform, on these practical guides for teachers, generating high quality evidence, and what is the most challenging part of the education evidence cycle, turning it into practice. As part of this growing global network of organisations, we're committed to facilitating the sharing of best practices when it comes to turning evidence into practice throughout the network. And our partners, depending on their context, use different policy and practice levers to turn evidence into practice. In the UK, I think the biggest learning for us has been that we need to do more than just provide access to the evidence base and expose teachers to it. If we actually want to see practice change in the classroom, we need to build capacity and enable active implementation and dissemination. We do this partly through that research schools network of schools I mentioned earlier. The approach that is slightly newer for us is a two-pronged approach where we're also embedding evidence into initial teacher training. So with recent teacher professional development reforms in England, we have really supported them. So we have a new initial core content framework in the UK, which defines in detail the minimum expectations for trainee teachers. So the EEF contributed to this in 2 ways. Our CEO, Professor Becky Francis, sat on the expert advisory group who consulted on the development of this framework. And then EEF independently quality assured the evidence base of each framework statement and the fidelity of those statements to evidence, ensuring that all content was based on high quality evidence and tailored to specific roles. Following that quality assurance process, we then endorsed the framework. And this is why we're really pleased to be able to support the work of SUMMA and the University of the West Indies, who are really looking at how they can best embed evidence into initial teacher training in the Caribbean. We're really pleased to be invited here today, and we're really looking forward to hearing from Professor Mevarech and Dr. Spektor-Levi and learning more about this project as it develops. So thank you, Ivana. I'll hand back over to you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you very much for being here with us, and thank you for the support in the whole process for this amazing project. So now we are with our keynote speakers. Professor Zemira Mevarech is full professor and dean of the Faculty of Social Science at the Bar-Ilan University in Tel Aviv. And Dr. Ornit Spektor-Levi is a senior lecturer and head of the Teacher Education Program in Science and director of the Dagan Center, the National Teacher Center for STEM Education in Preschool at Bar-Ilan University in Tel Aviv. So thank you, and I pass the word to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I don't know what time is now in Caribbean. Here in Israel, it's 6:30, almost about 7 o'clock in the evening. Thank you very much for inviting us. Thank you very much, and I'm very excited to be here. As a matter of fact, I was diagnosed with the COVID a couple of weeks ago, so my voice is not back as it used to be. So I'll give the floor to Ornit, and Ornit will present our slides, our PowerPoint. Actually, what I would like to say is that Raphael, in his opening words, actually raised the most important questions that I wanted to raise as well. So I wouldn't repeat it, and we don't have the time, and I don't have the voice to do it, and he did it excellently, so I don't have to do that. I would like to say that we work with SUMMA in Chile for 2 years or maybe 3 years. We love to work with them. Excellent team, very, very good experience, and only good words I could say about them. So thank you, Raphael. Thank you for the Chilean team. Thank you, Amy, for your words, for your good words. Actually, we know about the English system and the English and what you are doing in England. So we appreciate it very much. And once again, thank you for inviting us. And I'll give the floor to Ornit. If there will be questions at the end, hopefully I'll be able to answer as well with Ornit. Thank you again for inviting us, and thank you for being here tonight, this morning, whatever.
Hello, so thank you, Zemira. So I'm Ornit Spektor-Levi, and I will start immediately by sharing our presentation, so we can start right away. Thank you all for inviting us for this afternoon. We feel honored and pleased to meet you here all and share our experience and knowledge with you. We are aware of the fact that all of you are also very knowledgeable and experienced with working with teachers and in the education system and in teacher training. And I'm sure we can share our knowledge with you, and I'm looking forward also for the discussion by the end of our presentation. So we'll present our slides for something like 30 minutes. Maybe it will be a little bit less or a little bit longer, but I will try to keep it as a 30-minute presentation. So as I just said, although there is a huge distance between us physically, we have to cross continents and oceans in order to reach your place. But at least the technology made it easier for us. And with one click on the computer, we can zoom in and meet you all. So we feel close to you, although the destination is so huge and long. So we will bridge this gap very quickly, and we will move on to our topic. Just as Raphael said, and of course Amy presented, we very much acknowledge the work of the EEF and the very important analysis that this group is doing, because it really show us that we are on track. We are in ourselves in the right direction. Our studies of about metacognitive thinking, about the benefits of collaborative learning, and our understanding about the importance of feedback, we can feel and we can see that this work and the findings that we ourselves find in our studies, getting support from the work of the EEF. which just as Amy said, the EF analyzed recent research findings based on 2,500 studies, which encompassing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of students in all those studies. And as you can see here, and I will show it just briefly, you can see that the last analysis show that metacognition and self-regulation is one of the very high impact way or doing the strategy that they benefit with the very big impact with very low cost. And this is based on the extensive evidence. So not only metacognitive thinking and self-regulation is a good strategy for teaching and learning, but also, as you can see here, feedback. Feedback is also categorized as very high impact for very low cost. As you can see here, also with the infographics here, and also the collaborative learning approaches that we will just discuss this afternoon in our presentation. So these three very important strategies are the basis of our approach and the models that we developed along the years. We were invited to this webinar to talk about effective teaching practices in teacher training curricula. So we thought, what are the effective teacher training practices? And what we believe is that the best way to teach novice teachers or teachers in their training phase is the best strategy is modeling. If we will show them and if we will teach them the same way that we think is effective for their students, so they will learn by experiencing themselves, they will learn how to teach. What you experience and what you feel and what you try, this is the way that will provide you the confidence to teach in your classroom in the same way. So modeling is actually enabling student teachers, but also teachers, faculty, participants, other participants to experience cognitively and emotionally the innovative pedagogy as it really works. Modeling also increased the probability of implementing the innovative pedagogy in the classroom. So as the EEF found that metacognition, collaboration, and feedback are effective teaching strategies for students, we believe that these are the effective teaching strategies also for teachers during their training phase. Okay, so effective teaching practices in teacher training curricula, they will lead also to effective teaching practices in school. We would also like to relate to what we believe is very important, and this is relating the teachers the same way that we relate to our students. We have to understand that teachers are also diverse, and each teacher, each person is different from the other. As we all know, no two people are alike. Each individual is unique with his, her own characteristics, competencies, and we would like to relate to the teacher-student as the student in the classroom. We would like to relate to him or her as the whole learner. And in a minute, I will explain what we mean by saying the whole learner. We also think that in a classroom of 30 students and even more, there is at least 30 different personalities and 30 different learning preferences. And we should relate and we should answer and address the needs of each one of the students, even though they are grown-ups and they are the ones that will be the teachers in the classroom in the future, we still have to relate to these different personalities and learning preferences and other unique needs of each one of them. So student diversity is coupled with teacher diversity. And it's also coupled with school diversity, faculty diversity, and so on. So the question is, how can we cope or take advantage of this diversity? So we rely on the approach of inclusion, not only in our students' classrooms, but also in our teacher-students' classrooms. So this is part of our approach while training students to become teachers. So what is the improved approach and the Mufa approach, which is called multifaceted holistic approach? So if we look here at this model, visual model, we would like to relate the learner, and as I said, it doesn't matter if it is a student in an elementary classroom, or is it a student of in high school or in the university. All of them, we can relate to each one of us and them as a personality that has different dimensions that should be addressed. The cognitive dimension, the social dimension, the emotional dimension, and the sensory motor dimension. So if we relate to the whole learner, we would like to relate to the cognitive, social, emotional, and sensory motor dimensions and aspects and needs of the learner. But the core idea in the center of this approach is the improve, which is developing the metacognitive thinking and problem-solving thinking of the individual, the learner, and metacognitively be able to think about his own cognitive processes, social processes, emotional processes, and sensory motor or multimodal understanding and processes as a learner. And we would like to exemplify each dimension by specifying specific strategies that might help you understand what do we mean by cognitive dimension, for example. So teaching in a constructive way, developing metacognitive thinking, teaching explicitly content as well as skills, using formative assessment, relaying to the learning preferences of the student. This is the ways and strategies that we can answer the cognitive dimension of the learner. As far as the social dimension, by social constructivism, by inclusion in the classroom, by leading and instructing the students to work in a team, as a team, in collaborative learning. This is what we mean by answering the social dimension of the whole learner. We would also like to mention cultural responsiveness, which is also very important and is part of our approach. As we look at the emotional dimension, we mean by providing positive and corrective feedback, empathy, relevant learning, using humor in our teaching and in our instruction, letting the students, providing them the opportunity to choose their way of learning by giving them the opportunity to choose how to learn a specific topic. And when we relate to sensory motor aspect, we mean experiential learning, using multimodality, out of class learning, a lot of exploration, gamification. So we believe that by applying all these strategies, of course, not at once, but along a certain teaching unit, By applying these diverse strategies, we can understand and address the needs of each individual and each of the students with his or her own needs and the ways that he or she like to learn. So, as I said, we can look at the classroom and look at its diversity and inclusion. Each one is different, and each one of them is a whole learner with his and her own needs. So we would like to look at a classroom and relate to each one of the students. No student left behind. No, we don't want any students to feel that he or she is not respected or is not achieving the right level that we are expecting. We don't want any of our students to feel that they have no future in our classroom or that they cannot achieve a certain level. The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. We know from other experiences that sometimes a child or even an adult that didn't succeed while learning in school, when he or she became older and started his or her own life and learning and developing in her or his own way, they could become a cornerstone. So we relate to all students in the classroom. As Raphael just mentioned, we especially focused on 4 strategies. In the cognitive dimension, we relate to the metacognition and the self-regulation. In a social dimension, we focus mainly on collaborative learning. In emotional dimension, we focus mainly on the feedback and reflection. And on the sensory motor domain, we focus mainly on multimodality. I would like just to share with you one of our findings from our just recent study in which we explored classes who learned in accordance with the Mufa and improve instruction. This was in the context of science education. But just to show you one example of our findings from many other findings, I would like to show you here this graph in which we divided our sample into 3 groups according their scientific knowledge and skills level before the research started. Okay, so what we can see here are 3 groups of students: those who are low achievers in the pre-test of knowledge and of scientific knowledge and skill. This group is the medium achievers, and this group is the high achievers. Black means the scores before we started the study, and the gray is their scores after intervention. But intervention took place only in the experimental group, of course. Okay, so in this graph, you can see control group, the scores of the control group and the experimental or the intervention group who experienced Mufa and improve in their science studies. You can see that the experimental group improved their scores significantly with a size effect, which is a very good one, and they improved their scores after the intervention. Comparing the control group, who improved only among their low achieving students, but the medium achieving students, even their scores even decreased, and also the high achievers, even their scores also decreased. But the intervention group improved their scores in all 3 levels of achievements. So we believe, and this is what we study, we believe that the metacognitive support and the opportunities that we provide the students to practice metacognitive thinking, this is the one of the variables or the intervention that improved students' achievements. What is metacognition? Metacognition is what we call the GPS of thinking. Metacognition is the ability to think about one's own thinking, and the way that the individual can monitor and control and improve his or her own thinking. The metacognitive thinking is related to two main aspects: knowledge about cognition and regulation of one's own cognition. The knowledge of cognition is knowing about what, answering the what question, the declarative knowledge. What is the declarative knowledge that I need in order to accomplish a certain task? What is the procedures that I need to take in order to accomplish a certain task? And what is the conditional knowledge? When and why I should practice a certain skill or knowledge. Regulation of one's own cognition means how the individual plan, control, and monitor, process information, debug or evaluate his own thinking and his or her own processes in order to accomplish a certain task. So what is the improve? Improve is our approach and our model that was developed and designed by Professor Mevarech, in which we instruct our learners how to approach a certain task, which means, and how we teach and how we learn new topic. So the first stage in improve is introducing new concepts. Then we develop into understanding of what are the questions that we can ask in small groups, metacognitive questions about the topic and about what we know about the new topic. So metacognitive questioning, especially in small groups, are a vehicle for a better understanding of the new concepts. Then we move on to the third phase, in which we practice using metacognitive questioning and also sell the in which social and emotional learning is taking place. The next stage is review and using the metacognitive questions and sell. Then obtaining mastery over routine and the problems which are not usual for the students, complex ones, and that provide the students opportunities to implement high order thinking skills and high order problem solving skills. Then the next stage in improve is the verification, in which we look and check with the students, how did they work? Did they manage to accomplish the task in an efficient way and to reach a high quality product? And then it's the stage in which the teacher can decide, in accordance with the achievements and the outcomes of the students, whether the teacher should provide the student enrichment activities or remedial activities in order to develop and enhance the students' learning outcomes and understanding. We would also like to specify the questions that the student should ask while accomplishing a task. The first stage is comprehension. what is the problem or the task is about? What actually do I need to understand, to learn, or to accomplish in this task? The second one is connection. How is the problem similar to or different from problems or tasks I have already solved? And we always ask the students to explain and reason their answers and their choices. And again, I would like to remind you, this is good not only for school students, but also for teacher students, also for adults, and not only for young students. Strategies, what kind of strategies are appropriate for solving the problem and why? Also asking the students to explain their reasoning. And does the solution or the outcome make sense? Can the problem or task be solved in a different way? Am I stuck? Why? So all this metacognitive process is good also for the teachers to realize whether their teaching strategies are appropriate for their students, or as students, whether the way that they accomplish now tasks which are part of their curricula, do they accomplish their task in appropriate way, and do the solutions and outcomes do make sense and appropriate during their own studies. We can see here, for example, in this study that was taken, taken by Professor Zemira Mevarech. We can see here a study in which students got metacognitive support during their learning. They were divided into different groups in which they got intervention that enhanced their learning with the improved approach, and by providing them tasks that were either routine tasks or complex, unfamiliar, and non-routine tasks. And as you can see here, the group that studied in accordance with the improved approach enhanced and increased their achievements in all three measures that we took. Even if they answered just routine tasks, or if they answered and accomplished complex and unfamiliar non-routine tasks, and also in the total score, the improved students showed higher achievements and higher understanding of their learning. So as you can see here, the Mufa approach, multifaceted holistic approach, and the improved approach enhanced students' understanding and students' achievements in all conditions that we tried. So what the research shows? The research shows that, like cognitive strategies, metacognitive needs to be explicitly taught and intensively practiced, also in teacher training programs. Metacognitive instruction must be embedded in the subject context. Learners must be informed of the usefulness of metacognitive activities, and especially future teachers should be informed. Metacognitive ought to be part of interactive learning environments like collaboration or cooperative learning, or in ICT environments. Metacognitive instruction is necessary for all students at all grades level, and also in teacher training programs, in order to reach professional development. What do we know about collaboration? Let's take a pause now and look at what do we mean by collaboration. As we said, a little humor is always good in order to answer emotional needs. So let's see some humor clip. I will stop the sharing a second just to make sure that you will see the movie in a in a quality version. Do you see the video? So I hope you enjoyed this a moment of humor in our presentation. But it shows you that union is strength, and collaboration can contribute a lot also for our learners. We know that teamwork can contribute a lot to the individual needs because it develops the sense of belonging. It develops the sense of involvement and commitment. It enhances motivational technique, raising commitment. It lessens individual strains and the feeling of insecurity. It encourages learning and understanding. So collaboration is a good strategy for learning also as teachers. And what we need is 6 prerequisites in order to implement collaboration in explicit instruction by practicing it again and again and again with the students, the teacher students. And this is very important because teachers can gain a lot from collaboration with their peers in school when they will be teachers. So practicing teamwork and collaboration is very important. We have to work about group composition, how to divide our class and also the teachers' classrooms into groups. Should it be homogeneous groups or should it be heterogeneous groups by knowledge, by level of knowledge, but by level of achievements? How should we divide our students' groups? What are the roles that can be taken in the group while collaborating? What is an appropriate task that invites students to collaborate? Also very important to explicitly talk about time planning and how to plan the whole practice and working together. We would also like to mention that our approach, the multifaceted holistic approach, is also emphasizing social and emotional learning. This is exactly the area in which the domain of the social aspect and the emotional aspect are meeting together in order to work in a social and emotional teaching and learning. So emotional and social competencies and experiences are actually meant to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relations, make responsible decisions. All those social emotional characteristics are the ones that will enhance students' achievements and their motivation, not only to study, but also to be good teachers and excellent teachers. We are a bit short of time, so I will think I will skip on this video, but I suggest you to watch this very interesting video in which you can see how the teacher actually implements socio-emotional instruction and how he listens to the students and to their voices and ideas And this is a very interesting video that I think we recommend you to see. We can send you the link. And the last aspect that I would like to relate to is feedback, positive and corrective feedback. Hattie and Tipperley said that reinforcing feedback is one of the most powerful teaching mechanisms. And we can see that feedback is also one of the most effective teaching strategies that was found by the EEF. So corrective feedback and positive feedback is a very powerful strategy. Also, we would like to relate to remedial activities. And we would like to say that remedial activities should not repeat the ongoing instruction, but should enhance and provide the students with other ideas and instructions that he or she were not used to before. They have to be implemented after each short unit, have to fit different learning styles, have to include visual, concrete, physical, and so materials, and have to be based on metacognitive scaffolding. It can be implemented in small groups with the teacher or another student, or individually with the teacher. And it could be implemented in ICT environments. So remedial activities are very important in order to develop and enhance students' understanding, and by listening to their own ideas and own thoughts and understanding, and develop those understandings later on. But not only remedial activities should be provided to students, also enrichment activities should be provided for those students who already understood the materials that have been taught. Enrichment activities should be related to the units, not to the next topic, but keep the students, even those who are very advanced, keep them still working on the same topic as the whole classroom. It has to be based on metacognitive scaffolding, embedded in CAN tasks, which mean complex, unfamiliar, and non-routine tasks. It could be implemented either in small groups or individually, with or without the teacher. And again, ICT environments are very important as well. Multimodality is also an important dimension that we will not describe here now in detail, but giving the students the opportunity to learn and to understand what is a visual representation, or what are the different ways in which to represent a certain data or a certain topic, is very important in our world, which is multimodal. And in everyday life, we experience multimodality in every area that we touch and experience. So to conclude, the multifaceted holistic approach with the improved approach and model, we believe is a good way, or as we say, a compass for the teacher and also for the teacher trainer to realize whether he or she relates to the different dimensions of the whole learner, the cognitive, social, emotional, and sensory motor dimension of the learner. This is compass to realize whether, while we are instructing our future teachers, do we model them the way that we want them to teach in their own classrooms? Do we model them how to develop their cognitive dimension? Do we model them how we develop the social dimension, the competencies to work as a team, to collaborate in the 21st century? Do we model them how to provide positive and corrective feedback for their future students? Do we model them how we intervene empathy, relevant learning, and humor in their instruction and learning? And do we model them how to implement experiential learning, out-of-class learning, gamification, and so on. So what is the effect of the Mufa and Improve model on teachers? First, we would like to indicate that everyone can improve his or her schooling outcomes, and practice is one of the most important vehicle for learning and for a future implementation of teaching strategies. So practice, practice, and practice is one of our suggestions how to work with the teachers, future teachers. Working and teaching based on the Mufa and Improve may help in narrowing the achievements opportunities gaps, just like as Amy mentioned in her warm welcome greeting. Working with accordance with the Mufa and Improve will provide opportunities for enlarging teachers' teaching repertoires, providing them with the ideas of rich and diverse instructional strategies. It will improve teachers' professional development, and it provides the teachers and the teacher trainers the opportunity to join international studies, be at the forefront of education, just as also the EEF shows as regards to metacognition, collaboration, and feedback. So we invite you now to reflect and to think, what did you learn now? How did you learn? What will you take to your own classroom, to your own work, to your own interaction with the teachers, students? And what are your feelings about our presentation? And we would like to thank you for listening to this presentation. And we hope you heard the translation was in the right pace. And we hope that we were very clear about our approaches and our models. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Ornit. Great presentation. Everyone is excited about it. Everyone is asking the PowerPoint, and we will share it to our, and yes. The webinar is also recorded, so we will also share the link for you to watch it again if you want. Thank you, Zemira, as well. Unfortunately, we are a little bit behind of time, so we are not going to have time for questions. Thankfully, this is only the first webinar of a series of webinars that we are planning to have in the framework of this project of teacher training reform in the Caribbean. So we hope that you can join us in the future. And to close this space, I would like to pass the word to Dr. Joel Worrican, who is the Dean of the Faculty of Education of the University of West Indies at KIX. Joel.
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you, Ivana. And it's really a pleasure to be here. I have to thank the speakers for doing an excellent job of bringing the research to us and showing how the research translates to practice. I really want to start my closing remarks by just reminding us where we sit. In the Caribbean, we are a space, the English-speaking Caribbean, where we were once colonized by the British, and that has affected how we do education. So even how we train teachers, that has had major effects on our approaches. And we are somewhat stuck in a rut as to how we do things. We have held on to the old practices and have not seemed to be able to relinquish them. So this is really a timely exercise we are doing. We have to say, you know, in bad experiences, sometimes we only think about it bad, but we sometimes have to embrace the good that comes out of it, because we have had COVID, and COVID has forced us to do things differently. In the School of Education, we are revising all our programs, but thankfully, SUMMA has come to the rescue. when it comes to our associate degree and bachelor's in education. These are the initial teacher training programs. And this is really quite good for us. So we want to thank SUMMA. We want to thank the EDF for their support in the region. We also want to thank the International Development Research Center for the help that they're given. I just want to say a few things. So we have listened to this powerful presentation, and I want to again say thank you very much. Like the presenters, I believe that what we do in education ought to be driven by research, you know, and that is a powerful message I'm taking away from what you've said. You have highlighted 3 strands: feedback, collaborative learning, metacognition. The good thing is that they have been generated from the research, and it is how do we incorporate them into our teacher training and have them trickle down into a classroom. That is the thing that we need to focus on. How do we get them to become entrenched in our practice? That to me is very important. Quite often we see excellent programs on paper, but how does it translate into practice? Is it going to be embraced? And we have got to find ways to ensure that this approach is embraced. We know that culture is a powerful thing. And we have a culture, a system of doing education that we need to turn upside down. So it is not enough to have an excellent program. We have to put all our minds together to shift the way in which we do education. And to me, that calls to the type of collaboration that you talk about. You know, so in the region, we have to form our communities to work together, but we cannot look inwards only. We've got to look to the SUMMA. We've got to look to the Latin American community. We've got to look to our colleagues in Israel and in the US and the UK. We've got to all work together to bring about the positive change that we need. I just want to say again, thanks. I want to particularly say thanks to SUMMA because they have been really good at getting us they have been the driving force. We are a small department with very little resources. And sometimes we are not able to respond in the most timely way when they ask us because of our lack of resources. But we are with you 100% because we want to see this change happening in the region. So thank you very much, colleagues. And thanks to this webinar, it is most timely.
Thank you, Dr. Great words, and it's a pleasure for us to work with you, especially on the whole team of the University of West Indies at the Faculty of Education. And finally, to close this webinar, I will pass the word to Raul Chacon, who is the director of KIX LAC in SUMMA.
Well, thank you very much to our guest from Israel, Dr. Worrican, Amy from EF, and all of you that are here. We really want to continue this with dialogue. So please, we encourage you to send us your thoughts, your comments, your questions to continue this conversation. That's the first I wanted to say. We can transmit it. We really want to continue working hard as we are doing now. And we want to respond those needs, demands, and questions, of course. Just a few words to finish this webinar. This has been really inspiring. The webinar gave us relevant pieces of research and experiences that have been working around the world, even in Chile, as it was mentioned in the networks of schools in the north of Chile. But equally important, it raises many questions about the specific and broad issues. I think we have a wonderful homework from those questions as well. We need to think on considering our different cultures, societies, what kind of frameworks of quality education are we discussing? What kind of frameworks or of quality teaching are we discussing globally, regionally, nationally, locally? That's our inspiration as well, and we want to, and we really like to learn from the global experiences, but also to listen carefully what is happening in every society and local community. Thank you very much. Let's continue this work, and I'm sure it's been wonderful for everyone as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raul, and thank you to everyone for joining us here. And if we can turn on our cameras for a final picture, would be great. And well, only 1 minute. Remember that we will share the presentation and the link.
Thank you. And in the meantime, thank you, Raul. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Ivana. Thank you, Summa, Rafael, and Ornit. Thank you, everybody. We are very pleased to be here, very excited. And if you have questions or comments, we would love to get them and to read your feedback as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Zemira. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you to everyone, and see you in next meeting.
Thank you.
so much.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.